This is the OpenChain monthly North America and Asia meeting. This is the second meeting of the month. The first one was our North America and Europe meeting. We'll be having a bit of a recap of previous work, as well as flagging some of the forthcoming work for our specification work group to do. Now, as it happens, this week, Chris Wood, the chair of our specification work group, is absent, so I will be running through some of the activities on his behalf. Before we start, as always, I will show the antitrust policy notice. The full antitrust policy can be found on the Linux Foundation website, and if you're from a member company, you can ask questions of our council, Andy Updegrove. This meeting follows a regular agenda. The agenda is to cover some of the news around the OpenChain project, to talk about our work on standards and core material. That's where we look at what has been done and what's coming next. Then we look at what's happening around our education and reference material. We have a space for any other business, and then we close the meeting. Jumping straight in, the news this week is pretty light, but some important things. First of all, we only have one international meeting this week, this call, the monthly North America Asia call. That's because there are several large events happening, such as Open Source Summit in North America, as well as the Legal and Licensing Workshop in Sweden. For this reason, most of our project participants are busy this week. And in that sense, we are focusing a lot on recapping what happened before and what will happen next, as opposed to doing a lot on this call itself. Now, as we highlighted on the recent North America-Europe call, a very useful case study was just released by BlackBerry in conjunction with OSS Consultants and the OpenChain project. This is about BlackBerry's recertification and their adoption originally of ISO 5230. So the case study is several pages long, and it is available in a printable PDF format. It provides a good basis for understanding how an enterprise analyzes and chooses to adopt and uses in practice our ISO standard for license compliance. Speaking of our license compliance standards, some very big news today. This is around the Open Source Summit North America event. We have a conformance announcement from Volvo, which is using ISO 5230 as the basis of their compliance program. Well, that is a much appreciated move, and it's very heartening that they are publicly sharing this news. Naturally, this will impact the automotive supply chain and others. Now, other news. Our AI work group has been busy, or I should say AI study group, my apologies. The AI study group has been busy. There have been some very important workshops this month. On the 2nd of April, there was the main monthly workshop, and that discussed a lot about how AI compliance can be narrowed down, how the discussion can be focused, in particular, how ISO 5230 can be used as an optic for trying to get to the real heart of what is needed for AI compliance management in the supply chain. On the 11th of April, the recap for Europe and Asia was held, and on that recap, the discussion focused a lot on the 5230, how does it overlap with AI compliance and what might be missing. Learn more by viewing the recordings, and just to flag, you can get this deck easily when you check our GitHub repositories and look at the meeting minutes. We'll also be publishing this deck on the website with this recording. Right, work on standards and core material. Some very interesting work was done on our North America Europe call. Without going into incredible detail, we had a lot of issues closed in the last 2 weeks. So we had 3 issues related to the security specification closed, including one that came in from our friends at GTC1 Working Group Subcommittee 27, Information Technology Security. That was a proposed rewording for a section of the specification. We also had one issue closed on the license compliance specification. All of the work that occurred was essentially focused on how do we improve the language, improve the fidelity of these specifications, make it easier to understand and apply them to the market. Now, if you want to check out all of the open issues related to these specifications, you can do so on our GitHub. We build, edit, open issues, and close issues around our standards using GitHub. And you are very welcome not just to review, but also to submit and close issues yourself. Now, on this particular call, we have 2 items scheduled. I will provide a moment for people to review the slide, but in short, one relates to the security assurance specification, and the other relates to license compliance. Now, looking very quickly at what's open here, the security assurance one comes directly out of the last call. So it is related to what was covered in the last call and suggested as a to-do item. So here it is, open on GitHub, and of course, posting into the chat as usual. For those of you watching this on YouTube with the live stream, naturally you can't see what's posted into the chat here, but once again, you can find all of this material if you go to the OpenChain specification mailing list or main mailing list and check out the email related to this call. It'll contain the slides. And after this recording is posted, you'll find the slides adjacent to the recording as well. Anyway, getting to the point itself, we have a request to expand the definition section of the security spec to include secure programming techniques under the secure software development definition, and in security testing to include some language about static and dynamic. For those of you who are familiar with specification development, you'll understand that the definition section is simply providing context. It's not part of the, how do you put it, terms and conditions of the standard itself. For those of you unfamiliar, when it comes to something like a standard, the definition section is designed to provide interpretations, to set context, so that when you read the actual requirements of the standard, you know what it means when it says something like secure software development, or it says something like security testing. Anyway, on this call, because we have a very low audience due to Open Source Summit North America happening right now. In fact, at this moment, the OpenSSF happy hour event is occurring. There's also an Amazon meetup and several others. So our audience is currently enjoying pizza and talking to each other face to face. Because there's very low attendance on this call in terms of people here able to communicate back and forth on Zoom, we're going to skip expanding the definitions for this call. We'll do it async and do it on the next call instead. Much the same will apply to the second point, which is the license compliance review, where we have an item verification materials for training next iteration. Now, this is an interesting one, and I think it's worth covering in some more detail. And I'll do that for this recording for reference to people watching this later. The verification material for training next iteration was something that came up from Andrew Katz, and he was suggesting adding information that there should be documented evidence that appropriate training courses exist. and have been undertaken by program participants. So this is really about expanding a little bit on training. So previously we said, have some training. This would be about recording what the training is more precisely. And that dialogue started a long time ago, 2019. And long story short, there is a suggestion for particular new wording to be added. And the example wording is that in the license compliance spec, add a section saying a documented procedure to assess the competencies of program participants and provide training and education or review of the relevant role as appropriate, is suggested by Andrew. So a document basically covering in more detailed training. Our chair of spec said that he thinks it might be a good idea to have some for examples and so on and so forth. And then the issue's left open. Do we include something like this? Do we not add something to the spec? Undetermined. And with the low attendance on this call, we will not attempt to answer that question at this moment. For those of you who want to check out the precise language used, you'll find the issue online. I'll put this in the chat. It's also in the slides. But the long story short, Andrew felt there was a gap in the training and assessment procedure or policy, that it goes straight from identifying competencies without describing the training or education per se. Okay, so this came up in an audit where he was doing some work, and he has a suggestion for language to fill that out. And there's some comments from Chris to add examples or so. We really need to talk this one through further, and we'll do that on a call with higher live attendance. Right. I see on our call, we have both Fukuchi-san and also Daikoku-san, and that will lead us to something in the any other business section where we'll mention the SBOM quality spec, which is related to the reference and support material. So there was an enormous meeting of the education subwork group recently. The education work group covered a lot of material in that meeting. The chairpersonship moved from Nathan Kumagai to Andrew Katz, and there was a summary of work done so far. The new version of the supplier education leaflet will be sent to the Japan work group for review and their assessment and their decision if they like the global updates. The new version of the training slides is ready for a point release. We're just going to have that point release prepared as slides, and as long as the community likes it, out it goes. We also had the formal approval of the steering committee that the telco work group's SBOM quality guide will become an official OpenChain resource. And that means that we will have a new OpenChain guide to SBOM quality based on that document coming out very, very soon. And there's actually more that went on in that meeting, ideas for types of guides and other material, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, to that point, and that's why I was very glad to see Daikoku-san on the call, if I recall correctly, the SBOM, telco's SBOM quality guide is translated into Japanese, and I think some more translations have appeared. So I just wanted to let you know that as we prepare with the global work group, the official OpenChain version of the document in English, we'll do the Japanese one at the same time. So there'll be a simultaneous release of that. And that will hopefully allow our audience for this to be much bigger than it would be if we just released in one language. So I wanted to flag that for you and to make sure that you knew that that's the basic plan. Now, if I remember correctly, and I'm just pulling up the telco telco repo right now. Yeah, we also have a French version of this guide in play. So that means we'll be able to take this material, put it into the format that will be used for the final release version of this guide as an official OpenChain resource. And we'll have French, English, and Japanese in the first official release, which should happen really soon. I mean, on our education call, Andrew concurred that we're ready to go, basically. Main thing then is formatting, which I'm going to arrange. For reference, when it comes to formatting and so on, I think that the supplier education leaflet is a really good start to work from. So I'm just pulling up the original supplier education leaflet. I'll put it up in English and this PDF format. So looking like this. I'm thinking having the new material like the SBOM quality guide using the same basic templates and look so that we'll have a good match between supplier education, SBOM quality guide, and so on. And that would actually match what we've been doing elsewhere. I remember I just mentioned BlackBerry had released a case study. I'll scroll down to that. The BlackBerry case study actually uses the same layout and format. So you can expect that design language to continue in OpenChain and that to be the basis of the SBOM quality guide. All right, a short call because as I said, most of our audience is at Open Source Summit North America and is busy at various events there. We'll wrap up here with a last pause for the any other business section and any questions.
Shan, I'm very sorry to attend this meeting very belatedly. And I want to hear about the AI study group. They are becoming a working group. Is that correct?
No, not yet, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
They are still a study group. So the AI study group is still at the situation of just studying the question of AI compliance. But if they come to a clear understanding, okay, so there's more to do than talking, there's some reference material to make, then they would apply to become a working group. And at the last board meeting, we created a procedure for that. They'd have to write an application and the governing board would review it. Basically, they'd say, we've done our study. We think there's something we can make. We'd like permission to be a working group to make it. But that's still pending. So there's still a study group. And they are looking at ISO 5230 and they're checking, you know, green line, oh, this would help with AI compliance. Red line, oh, this would not help. But that's still in the brainstorming area. It's not in the making a new guide or making new reference material for the market.
I see. Thank you very much for the explanation.
Of course. And if I may speculate, and this is my personal speculation, I think they are getting closer to thinking maybe there's some simple key topics for AI compliance. So I speculate that in the future, they will probably ask the governing board to become a working group to do some type of reference material, but that's my speculation.
Thank you. And other topics I want to know is about the maturity model. I saw the several months ago that someone proposed the ideas that thought on the OpenChain maturity model or some maturity model.
Yes,
What is the current situation for the maturity model?
a very good question. So the short answer is that Andrew Katz, who is now the chair of education, is very interested in contributing maturity model guidance to OpenChain. And that will be based on industry standard maturity model CMM.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he would like to give
Mm,
that, and all we have to do is essentially look specifically at his proposal
mm,
and um, decide if we want it to be official material or not.
mhm,
So I'm just going to share something. Okay. So he had some material about
mhm,
maturity model, and I'm
mhm,
just putting it on the screen. The
mm,
purpose here is we can look at it on the recording, so please don't try to read it all as I do it here. Capability maturity modeling, a high-level approach. This was developed by the company Orcro, and he wants
mm,
to
mm,
contribute that development to OpenChain. That's
mm,
separate from him being chair of education. It's something he was talking about a year ago.
mm,
Basically, the high-level approach would be about companies doing Kaizen and continual improvement around 5230. And the goal would be that a company can start small and then have a structured approach to improving their compliance method.
mhm,
Uh, the natural thing with 5230 is that it already provides a pretty clear starting point. And when it comes to the maturity modeling itself,
mm,
there's a way to split the requirements of the standard into the type of items required in the maturity model. And that last part, splitting it and then putting it together into a picture and setting levels, is what Andrew's talking about, hopefully contributing as an official open chain resource.
mm,
And the goal of that would not be to make more demands around 5230. The standard stays the same, but to provide a structure that if companies were saying,
mm,
I have a basic program, how do I improve? They can look at um, the maturity model and be inspired. Okay, if I do these items, I will have stepped up in these key directions and blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
yeah, it makes sense. Thank you very much. And uh, that is why I asked this question is that as you know, we are now talking with chaos people,
Yes.
and I think that this kind of maturity or measuring the maturity is
Yeah.
one of the good metrics for the open source OSPO activity or OSS initiative.
Yes,
Uh,
I agree.
so that is why, and I want to synchronize this kind of maturity ideas, and also the including other things like education or other activity by OSPO is a good good measurement of how we achieve the level or something. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's very fair to say that the idea, the intention here would be
Mm,
to make it much easier for
mm,
companies to
mm,
move forward and improve. So,
yes.
I mean, Andrew has shown little pieces of this before.
Mm,
Um, I'm actually very keen on him to send test documents and for us to have those documents to begin
mm,
actually building an open chain resource out of them.
mm.
So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. In the future, if you or OpenChain approves, then this kind of the measurement metrics, we or Japan Work Group want to propose to chaos or uh, the education work group also can uh, propose a chaos to the metrics, I think.
That's a great idea. That's a
Mm,
really great idea.
mm,
I mean, we had some feedback that
mm,
people didn't want any confusion that uh,
mm,
there was going to be OpenChain plus, OpenChain
mm.
plus plus, OpenChain plus
Yes,
plus plus. But
yes.
I think it's a very different question if we make it really clear that maturity modeling is a separate issue from basic adoption.
Mm,
Something
yes,
like chaos metrics might be a really good way to do that.
yeah. And so uh, the uh, the chaos is a very good, but very difficult to adopt for
Yes,
the open source beginners. So at first we want a more basic measurement metrics. So that this kind of metrics is very nice for the beginners.
of course.
Mm,
Of course. Yes, yes, yes. I mean, Andrew showed some mock-ups before that were
mm,
basically just in a
mm,
spreadsheet, which
mm,
might be ideal.
mm,
Yeah, no, as I said, Andrew wants to do it. I'd really
mm,
like him to send in the material. I think
mm,
he's just been waiting for some consensus and
mm,
interest.
mm,
And basically on the call last week,
mm,
he was saying it's something he'd like to work on. And
mm,
your
mm,
interest now is very useful. So
mm,
I'll
mm,
ask Andrew
mm.
to get started. Show us the
Yes,
spreadsheet. Let us work on it.
yes, yes, yes. And so I don't care if we at the Japan work group propose something or just the education work group will propose the metrics.
Mhm.
It is okay for me. I want to synchronize the chaos and open chain maturity model. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, I'm going to, as a follow-up to this call, I'm going to
Hmm.
point Andrew to the time code starting this discussion
Hmm.
and ask him to coordinate with you to get this done.
Hmm. Thank you.
Brilliant. That
Great.
was one of the best any other business parts we've had in a long time.
Mm.
So really useful. Okay. Then the next thing for me is I think to basically say we've we're going to go to Andrew and ask for this stuff, and that's already essentially then decided. We're going to request this to be done as part of the I should say, education work group. We're going to ask for that to happen, and we'll see what we can do. So, do we have any other business on top of this? If not, then we'll end this call here. I have several emails from people that just came in saying they're sorry they couldn't make the call. They're getting on a plane or they're at the event, etc., etc. So this recording will be going to everyone pretty soon. Thank you, Fukuchi-san, very much, as always. Thank you, Daikoku-san, and
Thank you very much.
yeah. And I expect, by the way, to have the SBOM quality draft before the end of this month into your hands. You can
Okay.
release it very soon too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Have a beautiful day, and I'll talk to you very soon.